Hello again, friends. Sitri Turbo is starting to rouse more interest in the buddy fight community, so I decided to post a quick video about it so that people could kind of understand how the deck works and what the deck is. Sitri Turbo is or possibly was, a troll buddy fight deck that ran 4 impacts, 4 Sitris, and 42 spells to abuse Sitri's on-call ability, which allows him to cast the top card of your deck without paying its cast cost if that card is a spell. Additionally, any ability that is used through another ability, such as calls done through other card effects or spells cast through other card effects, cannot be negated by spell negates or by call negates like Begone. Using bouncing cards like Noisy Danceroom, Oops, Check It Out, which is no longer ran, Magical Goodbye, and so on, we'd actually be revealing those cards with Sitri to bring Sitri back to our hand to call him again and essentially mill one card from our deck. The purpose of the deck thinning is to go through as much of the deck as we can. By gaining and expending gauge, we can easily get key cards in our drop zone like Sitri, Gatling Hardcore, or Noisy Danceroom to bring them back to hand with Devil Advantage so that we can chain spam more abilities. We get a solid amount of gauge with Key of Solomon Volume 1 and Never Say Never. We have strong card draw with Nice One, Key of Solomon Volume 2, and No Pain, No Gain. More than any of these cards, though, the biggest thing that's increased the consistency for this deck has been Trio. Trio is pay 1 gauge, pay 1 life, add a monster from your drop zone to your hand. With so much random gauging and gauge spending, it can be very difficult to not accidentally burn a Sitri that you would have preferred to play, and Trio fixes this issue. It also fixes another issue where if you don't see a Sitri, you can random gauge and then pay that gauge, and then boom, Sitri's in the drop zone because you happen to random it, and then you can bring it back with Trio. Many people knew of this deck back when it was first created, but dismissed it as a fun deck that was beyond impractical. They weren't wrong. My initial Sitri list boasted roughly between a 2 to 4% win rate over all of its playtesting. I would play between 20 to 40 games with it just to get the satisfaction of winning once with it. The deck simply had too few good spells to make the engine of the build function, and was using things like Buddy Help and Buddy Charge because it lacked good options at that stage of the game. In Set 5, Solomon's Great Barrier was released. Sitri wasn't sure whether or not it was worth reducing the size of the monsters when you only had 4 monsters in your deck. I ended up not running it, leaving my Sitris in a weird spot where they couldn't generate much pressure, but I don't believe that was a mistake at the time due to lacking Trio. You would want it in now because of Gatling Hardcore regardless, though. Up until recently, the worst part about the deck was that it completely lacked a winning condition. You could self-mill like crazy and never actually accomplish anything. The 4 Transflame, the 4 Diabolical Hardcore, and 4 Overstand were just about the only outs to win, period. However, with the addition of keycards like Trio, Never Say Never, and Gatling Hardcore, literally all of the things that the deck was lacking are now gone. The only thing the deck could possibly need now to bump up its consistency would be a spell that lets you search out Sitri from your deck. So now here we are. We're sitting here, a deck that has a currently 45% win rate that only has 4 monsters in it. That's crazy. The deck may be simple to play, but simple is not always easy. Here's a small guide to prevent yourself from making a misplay that could cause you to do something you aren't allowed to do and potentially get a game loss if you didn't catch it in time. Keep in mind that I made one of these mistakes in this video, so even I don't always do it right, and I play this deck a dozen or so times a day. The first thing to remember, and this is what I did wrong in the video, is that if you have a once per turn spell, do not cast it unless you know you have no other copies of it in your deck, or if you don't have any way to get Sitri in hand without it. If Sitri reveals a once per turn spell that you've already cast, you will not get to use it. The second thing to remember is that Noisy Danceroom has an activated ability that lets you bounce, and gives you 1000 power. They are not just continuous effect spells that just add 1 damage to your impact. Use them wisely, keeping enough gauge to impact unless you need to fish hard or you will lose without it. Third, you can only have 1 Solomon's Great Barrier out. I actually played more than one a few times because the Buddy Fight area text for the card doesn't have the "you may only set 1 Solomon's Great Barrier on your field" text. The fourth thing is to discard wisely with No Pain, No Gain, keeping Solomon's Great Barrier, Sitri, and Devil Advantage in mind when making those plays. The final thing is that we're manly men who don't run defensive spells other than Oops, Goodbye, and Bastin Caps, with little to no intention of casting these defensively. Try to bait them into attacking your Sitris on the side, which are easily recoverable. Many games could have been lost if my opponent would have just gone face without worrying about Sitri at all. In closing, you can see how incredibly silly a max damage Gatling Hardcore can be. That's 9 damage. That's all for now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching.